Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Race to Power. I'm Mauri Gambhir, and we are starting off this edition with the latest from Iran and Iraq. We get you all about the final journey of the late Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Also ahead on the show, as the Labour leadership contest kicks off and the battle intensifies, where do things stand and what lies ahead? All this and more coming up. The funeral procession of Iran's late Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei reaching the final destination from Tehran to Karbala and Mashhad. The destinations of Khamenei's final journey carefully chosen, linking some of the most sacred centers. The holy city of Qom, the center of religious authority in Najaf, the place of Imam Hussein's killing in Karbala. In fact, let's just recap for you the final journey of Khamenei. At first, his mortal remains were placed inside Tehran's Grand Mosala, remember, where world leaders, Iran's top leaders, paid their respects. People carried red flags, in fact, with the Arabic inscription, Avengers of Hussein, drawing parallels between Khamenei's assassination and the killing of Imam Hussein, who was the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad. From the Grand Mosala, Khamenei's casket was taken out for a parade on the streets of Tehran. The capital city witnessed a sea of red and black, representing sentiments of vengeance and mourning. The next destination of Khamenei's funeral procession was Qom, a city of holy shrines, the country's religious power center, and the birthplace of the 1979 revolution, where Khamenei's casket with his signature black turban was paraded among thousands of mourners. And following this, Khamenei's casket entered the neighboring country of Iraq, where it was taken to the shrine in Najaf. It's a major pilgrimage site for Shia Muslims and the burial place of Imam Ali, who was revered as the first Imam in Shia Muslims, and he is also known as Haider, which translates to the brave one. And from Najaf, the procession moved to Karbala. Remember, Prophet Muhammad's grandson was martyred in the Battle of Karbala more than 1300 years ago. Making it a spiritual heart of Shia Islam, representing the ultimate symbol of martyrdom. And after Karbala, Khamenei's casket reached the final destination, the holy city of Mashhad, where his mortal remains will be buried. Mashhad is Khamenei's hometown, remember, and according to the late Iranian Supreme Leader's office, he had requested to be buried near the shrine of Imam Reza, a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. As the funeral ceremony of the late Supreme Leader draws to a close, the focus also shifting to his son and successor, the current Supreme Leader, who has remained absent reportedly from public eye throughout the procession. Trump has announced the end of the ceasefire, according to him, and in fact, both sides have been trading fire. All eyes now are on the current Supreme Leader, the new figurehead.
Every time you hit, we hit.
Let's just get in further perspectives from our special guest joining us on the broadcast, war correspondent and analyst with us on the broadcast from Paris. Thanks very much for being here. Let me just begin by asking you for your assessment and your understanding of what we've seen so far, the symbolism attached to those images that we've seen and the message that Iran right now kind of is sending out.
Thank you for having me. Well, the first message is the number of people who attended the funeral in Iran, in different cities of Iran, in Iraq, and then back to Mashhad. And we understand that there were several millions. It's a strong message that even Donald Trump said that he did not expect it. He thought that people didn't like him or didn't love him, insinuating that this is the kind of information he was fed into. So this symbolic support of the population in Iran, regardless their support or not to the government, because many Iranians are not really with the government policy. However, they all rally behind their leader who was assassinated in February by the Israelis and the Americans' war. This is where the nationalism of the Iranian came together in support of their leader and against this war. And that was demonstrated by the number of people who really filled up streets in Tehran, in Qom, in Mashhad, in Najaf, in Karbala, showing that the support of the Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei was beyond Iran because he was a source of emulation. He was not only the leader of Iran, but he was also a Grand Ayatollah that had many followers in Lebanon, in Iraq, and among the Shia Muslim in the world.
Right. I also have to ask you, we've seen the burial being delayed because of the war this entire time. And now that it is happening again, we've seen tensions spiking and the two sides exchanging fire, even as those ceremonies have been continuing. At the same time, question marks over the attendance of the current Supreme Leader during those ceremonies, and where things stand right now within Iran as far as the leadership is concerned. And all of this, of course, throwing up a lot of uncertainty for the entire region at the same time.
Well, yes, it is true that his remains were preserved for months in a cold storage due to the ongoing war and delayed funeral, which is unusual under Islamic customs. However, it is done and has been done in many occasions when there are circumstances that are not under the control of the family or the nation. However, we have seen his son taking over because normally there is no inheriting a process between a leader of the revolution to his son, but because the council of experts that is elected by the people selected his son Mojtaba Khamenei because his father was assassinated and because he was wounded, as a sign of challenge to the Americans, rather than submitting to the Americans and selecting someone else, that the council could have done that. However, they have insisted and the majority voted for the son in a signal of defiance to the Americans. Where we are at today is, again, the same ruling system in Iran is still in place. The leader of the revolution is not the absolute commander of everything. On the contrary, many countries don't understand that, even analysts. There are several systems in Iran that allow the decision to be taken through a series of bodies to land at the end at the national security of the country that is formed by the president, the foreign minister, the justice system, the IRGC, the army, the head of the parliament. All these people are inside this council, and they are the one who decide and then pass on the decision to the Grand Ayatollah to accept it. And we have seen in the last decision when Sayyid Mujtaba Khamenei accepted the MOU, saying, you know what is my point, which means he's against it. However, he passed on the responsibility to the president of the National Security Council, that is the current president, Pezeshkian.
All right, we're leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for joining us with those perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, shifting focus, the race to replace Keir Starmer, meanwhile, has officially started, and the Labour MPs have started the process of choosing a new party leader. And with that, Britain's next Prime Minister, former Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham, remember, is the overwhelming favourite in a way, with many in Westminster believing that he could walk into 10 Downing Street. The contest to choose Britain's next Prime Minister is now officially underway. Labour MPs, in fact, have started nominating candidates to replace Starmer after his resignation, setting the stage for one of the quickest leadership transitions in recent British politics. And so far, there's only one name in the frame, and that is Burnham.
Yeah, cheers, Maury.
Andy, thank you.
No worries, Kim, no problem at all.
Fresh from winning a by-election that returned him to Parliament, the former Greater Manchester Mayor is widely seen as a frontrunner to make it onto the ballot. Any candidate must secure the backing of at least 81 Labour MPs. That's 20% of the Parliamentary Labour Party. They must also win support from affiliated trade unions or local labour organisations. But with senior figures already rallying behind Burnham, many believe a serious challenger is unlikely to emerge. The next few weeks will decide who walks through the famous black door of number 10. If Burnham is the only candidate to qualify, Labour can fast-track the process with a special leadership conference on the 17th of July. That would basically clear the way for Starmer to formally resign before the King invites Burnham to form a new government on the 20th. But if another contender enters the race, the contest will stretch into August, with Labour members and affiliated unions voting before a winner is declared on the 29th. Burnham's path appears clear as of now, though. Former Health Secretary Wes Streeting, remember, has ruled himself out, publicly endorsed Burnham, while other potential rivals have so far stayed on the sidelines. If no challenger secures enough nominations, Burnham could become the Labour leader without a membership vote. And if that happens, Britain will soon have its 7th Prime Minister in just 10 years. Despite taking office without a general election, Burnham has already ruled out an early trip to the polls, insisting that he intends to govern under Labour's 2024 election mandate until the next scheduled general election. So there is never a dull day in British politics, it seems. And Reform UK leader Nigel Farage's by-election gambit also seems to have backfired. All political parties have refused to participate in the elections, calling it a political stunt by Farage. And now the void is filled by a rather unusual candidate. Farage, remember, resigned as Member of Parliament after allegations of receiving donations from a convicted fraudster. He sought to take the moral high ground by putting himself on the ballot, but the far-right leader is left fighting against a trash can. Count Binface has emerged as Farage's election rival. This is not his first electoral race. Bin Face also contested Makerfield by-election, remember, that saw Starmer's potential successor Burnham emerging as a winner. And apart from this, he also ran to become the mayor of London in 2024.
Teams, you know there'll be trouble.
But who exactly is the face behind the bin-shaped helmet that you see? It is the British comedian Jonathan David Harvey. Remember, participated in the elections as the novelty candidate called Count Bin Face. Farage is facing political ire, meanwhile, over allegations of receiving funds from a convicted fraudster. He called the by-election after a Sunday Times report reportedly claimed that Farage did not declare support by a long-time associate and convicted criminal before becoming a member of parliament, allegedly. Meanwhile, the U.S. Justice Department has sent out letters to election officials in all 50 states and Washington, D.C., warning of possible criminal charges if non-citizens vote in the federal elections. The department basically saying that the letters seek voluntary compliance with the federal law and remind states of their obligation to ensure that only U.S. citizens cast ballots in federal elections. The letters also warning election officials who knowingly keep non-citizens on voter rolls or help them cast ballots could face criminal prosecution. However, several Democratic state election officials have condemned the warnings. The move marking an escalation in the Trump administration's push to exert greater control over election oversight. The elections are largely run by state and local authorities, remember. The Trump administration has repeatedly alleged that non-citizens are influencing the U.S. elections. Despite no evidence of their voting, states regularly update voter rolls to remove the ineligible voters. The threat of criminal charges escalating that long-running battle between Washington and the states over voter data. Several states have reportedly already refused federal requests for access to voter rolls containing millions of Americans' personal details. And for more on these developments, take a look at this report sent by our correspondent Susan Teherani.
The Trump administration is stepping up its oversight of U.S. elections ahead of the midterm elections. The Justice Department has sent letters to all 50 states, officials in those states, and warning them that they could face criminal prosecution if they knowingly allow non-citizens to vote. Now, the DOJ also says that federal law requires states to maintain accurate voting registration lists and prevent ineligible voting. But several state election officials are now pushing back. They're saying that they already follow state and federal laws and describe the letters sent to them as unprecedented federal pressure. Now, the move comes as election integrity once again becomes front and center in the November midterm elections. Susan Teherani reporting from Vancouver for WION World is One.
Let's now get to an update from the United States ahead of the November midterm elections. Graham Plattner, a scandal-plagued Democratic Senate nominee, has ended his campaign from the state of Maine. This is after a sexual assault allegation that sparked calls for him to leave the race. Plattner has denied the claim. However, the allegation threatens to derail one of the Democratic Party's best chances of flipping a Republican-held seat.
We believe that for the movement to continue, it can't be made. And for that reason, we are suspending campaign operations. This is incredibly difficult because I know that some will think it's an admission of guilt, and it most certainly is not.
Plattner is a Marine veteran, oysterman, and political newcomer. Last month, remember, he won the Democratic primary in the northeastern state of Maine to face Republican Senator Susan Collins in November's midterm elections. His rise even drew comparisons to Donald Trump. Plattner's suspension of the campaign is likely to complicate the Democrats' efforts to win control of the Senate in the November elections. Republicans currently hold a 53-47 majority. Plattner has until July 13 to formally withdraw from the race. At that point, in fact, the state party would have until July 27 to select another nominee to challenge the Republican Senator Susan Collins. Collins has held the seat since 1997. In fact, Maine is considered a key state of control for the narrowly divided Senate, and Democrats were desperate for a candidate who is capable of defeating the Republican Senator Collins, while President Trump is broadly unpopular, reportedly. The scramble coming after a Politico report earlier this week. The report claiming that a woman said Plattner drunkenly forced her to have sex after she told him to stop, allegedly. He strongly denied the allegation, calling it troubling, serious and false, and said any accusation of non-consensual behavior was categorically untrue. The New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani's wife, meanwhile, is at the center of the controversy after skipping the July 4 celebrations, reportedly. The First Lady of New York reportedly spent the week leading up to America's 250th anniversary celebration at the purported pro-Palestine retreat in Spain, reportedly. In fact, she was reportedly seen at the airport on Monday before boarding a flight. Her attendance at the Islamic spiritual retreat in Corsica drew criticism from some Republican officials as the nation marked America's 250th birthday. While she was attending the retreat overseas, Mamdani remained in New York, taking part in official city events reportedly linked to the America 250 celebrations. And according to the New York Post, she traveled for a sold-out retreat by the Women's Sanctuary. The program featured art sessions, botanical workshops, and reflections on plants mentioned in Islamic texts. The report said that she is the group's artist in residence and one of the retreat hosts, reportedly. And she's also set to join another sold-out Women's Sanctuary retreat, reportedly, from July 9 to July 14. The retreat is reportedly taking place on an island that, unlike most of France, has not wavered in its support for Israel, especially after the October 7, 2023 Hamas attack that left 1,200 Israelis dead. Notably, in the past, she has drawn flack for liking posts celebrating Hamas and even creating an illustration, reportedly, for an anti-Israel article.
Solemnly swear.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition. We're taking a very short break. Stay with us.
Elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION, World is One.
The Israeli drone is above our heads all the time in Lebanon. More than 200,000 civilian homes have been destroyed. This looks like it used to be a toy for a little girl. Can't but wonder while I'm walking between all of this rubble, how many lives were destroyed, how many kids were traumatized, how many women lost their families. If this isn't a war crime, then what is? From the southern suburb of Beirut, I'm Redi Francis for WION, World is One.
Get the latest updates. Breaking news. Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is One.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.